This is Scott Welch, Muscle Insider Magazine. We're here with Kyley Paul, CEO and owner of Natural Reg Sci. How are you doing today, Kyley?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Scott. How are you doing?
Good. Now, listen, we all are into supplements. Supplements are a huge craze from athletes to everyday people. And obviously now the whole focus has been in the last year and a half is on immunity. So even the average person is using supplements. But for the benefit of the consumers that are based here in Canada, what are the most popular ingredients in the US that are actually banned in Canada in terms of supplements?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point that you just made, we actually saw the first double-digit increase in online sales over 2020 for the natural health industry overall. So it was a big year, and we're excited for that growth. But the five ingredients and the five most popular kind of questions that I get asked by US brands, and my team gets asked by US brands that are actually not allowed in Canada are yohimbine, Indian snake root or devil pepper, DMAA, any amphetamines, DHEA, and EPO. So erythropoietin. So
Yep.
those are not allowed in Canada as a natural health product. Some of them we can do as a drug product, so a DIN, but not in the natural health product category.
Now that's the thing is that though I can go into some stores or online and I can buy this, or I've talked to people at the gym and I see them, how are Canadians getting their hands on these kind of products still?
Yeah, so the Customs and Border Agency has a rule that you are allowed to order a 3-month supply of supplements from the US and have them shipped to Canada, basically, whether that's online order or through a store. And it kind of goes through the border without an MPN license, but it's a personal use 3-month supply only. And that's how you can get some of those products for a limited period of time for personal use in Canada.
Now, obviously, what are the steps that Health Canada goes through to regulate the everyday supplements? I mean, obviously, we being Canadians grow up with the French English labeling that's there, but obviously there's more to it than just that. But what are the basic steps that they do to help regulate supplements here?
So the biggest difference, I think, between the US and Canada, number one, is we have a pre-market approval process. So pre-market authorization before it gets on a retail shelf in Canada, also before it's allowed online. So Amazon.ca enforces this, and a lot of the big retailers on their online platforms enforce this, having an MPN license on the product before it's allowed to be sold in Canada. The facility where it's manufactured has to be GMP compliant as well. If it's manufactured in Canada, it requires a site license, and the equivalent in the US or wherever foreign jurisdiction where the product is manufactured. But there's 3 different classes of applications essentially for you to get an MPN license.
Okay,
So
we're going to get
there's,
into those, but hold on one second. Okay.
sure.
What does NPN stand for?
That's a natural product number. So it's an 8-digit number that's generated by Health Canada when your application gets approved, and it's required to be on the front panel of any natural health product.
And what is an NHP? Because I hear a lot of supplement companies using these terms interchangeably. What is an NHP?
I know when you're dealing with government, everything is an acronym. So everyone gets upset with me all the time. So we basically have our own secret language when you're dealing with government with all these different acronyms. So NHP is natural health product. So that's the umbrella category of products that fall under a certain directorate at Health Canada. So that includes general health supplements and vitamins, sports supplements, natural cosmetics, pet supplements, and natural cleaners and things like that, anything that's naturally derived. And those products under that category are required to have an NPN license, a natural product number on the label in order to be legally sold in Canada.
Okay, and you mentioned GMP. I see that on the back of the labels of a lot of the supplements companies. They always say manufactured in a state-of-the-art GMP licensed facility. What does GMP mean? What is that?
It's good manufacturing practices is what it stands for, and it's an internationally recognized standard. So whether you're in Canada, the US, Europe, Asia, GMP is a global recognized kind of stamp of approval and set of procedures that you need to follow to manufacture this type of product. Now, there are nuances in different countries and jurisdictions, and certain countries label and categorize these products differently, like a supplemented food or a food equivalent or something like that. But GMP and CGMP in Canada and the US are pretty standard across the board as far as what you need to do to maintain your facility to produce safe products.
Okay. Would you say, I mean, from what you've seen, because you've been in the industry a long time, you obviously have a background in this area. You work for companies as large as Jameson, which is obviously the longest vitamin company in Canadian history. And they always do things on the up and up. Now, would you say that the quality of the manufacturing in Canada has significantly improved?
Over
Like
time or
over
in
what
general?
may have been there 10 plus years ago, because the government is regulating things a little bit more on this side.
So I would say that the standards have been maintained over the last 25 years for sure. So the
Okay.
natural health product rules and kind of separation from drugs came into effect in 2004. So that's been going on a while, and even before that, when they were kind of in between a food and a drug, the products were still being manufactured in GMP facilities. So I think the facility requirements have stayed pretty consistent under the GMP umbrella, like at least the past 25 years. What I will say is different is the technology, the quality
Sure.
of ingredients, and the transparency with companies and their consumer.
Very good. Now, you mentioned that there are three categories. Let's get into that, exactly how Health Canada classifies your supplements.
Okay, are you ready for this?
Yes.
So let me first state that Health Canada has what they call monographs. So that's pre-cleared information, pre-approved information that they maintain on their website that includes the ingredient name, the source of that ingredient, the dose, what subpopulation it's allowed in, any health benefit claims you're allowed to make using this ingredient, and also any warnings or cautionary statements that are required to be on a label if you're using these ingredients.
Okay.
So there's single ingredient monographs, and then there's product monographs. So there's categories such as workout supplements. There's a workout supplement monograph that contains probably 50 plus ingredients in it. So
Okay.
that is considered still a single monograph. So a class 1 application takes 60 days for approval. It's when all ingredients in the product are found within a single monograph. So like I said, not necessarily a single ingredient product, but all the ingredients fall under the same pre-cleared information document that is maintained by Health Canada.
So would that mean that there's roughly 50 ingredients that are, say, in a pre-workout supplement that Health Canada already identifies that these are common in pre-workouts, and that these are, do they also say what dose? Because obviously we've seen
Yep.
some US formulas with like 700-800 milligrams of caffeine, and obviously there must be an upper limit that Health Canada has sort of said this is safe based on what they know. Is that how things work with that?
Absolutely. So first of all, there's way more than 50 approved ingredients that you might find in workout supplements or performance supplements in general that have been pre-cleared and are approved to be used in this category of product by Health Canada. And yes, all of the dosing is already found on the monograph.
Okay. All right.
So
That answers my question.
everything that you need to know is found on the monograph. Now you can go beyond the monograph, but that is when you would require to include extra information and research to substantiate and help support that.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that I think covers the class 1 application. A class 2 is when all of the ingredients fall under multiple monographs. So for example, if you have you use your workout supplement monograph and then you want to add in something else that's in another monograph, then that would fall under a class 2, which is a 90-day approval. And then a class 3 is when any one ingredient in the product does not have a Health Canada monograph. So that could also mean that you're going above the dose limit, for example, of a monograph, or you're using a source material that's not included in a monograph, or you want to extend or add a health benefit claim that maybe you've done studies on that is not in the Health Canada monograph.
Okay, gotcha. So if you're an innovative company or you're just pushing the edge, because new ingredients are obviously being discovered all the time, you sort of have to allow the Canadian government to review the research to determine, is this something that is safe for Canadians? And that is ultimately the goal. And I correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you're in the field, this is what you do, but the goal of this is to make sure that when we drink a pre-workout or we take a fat burner, that the interaction maybe between these substances is not going to have an exponential effect and cause health problems, or that on the flip side, does Health Canada demand that they be at a certain dose to be efficacious? Because we've seen the pixie dusting in the US that we see in formulas. Is that something that Health Canada looks at with your product?
Yep. So there were multiple questions there.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. I'll go back to the first one. So yes was okay, we'll do the pixie dusting first one. So any ingredient that gets a natural product number and MPN number has to have at least one health benefit claim. So for example, let's say you want vitamin C. So you have to have enough vitamin C in the product to make a health benefit claim. But if you wanted to have in turmeric or something else as an additive and listed on the label, that's fine, but you're not going to get a health benefit claim from turmeric, let's say, if it's not at a dose that has been proven efficacious for a certain health benefit. So you can have it in the product, but you can't make a health benefit claim that's going to get approved by Health Canada, essentially, from that standpoint. And I totally forgot your first question now that I was like on my train of thought for that.
Yeah, no, I was just sort of getting into the interactions between the ingredients. Sometimes if you take like Yohimbe with caffeine, you get an exponential effect of the caffeine. There's some research on Nerigen that shows that it increases the half-life of caffeine and things. But if you get somebody who's an armchair chemist and they just start throwing everything in the kitchen sink, and you know how it works with some of these formulators that don't have the educational background, they just look at someone else's label and then they say, hey, they've got this much of this particular ingredient in here, and let me just add this much more. If 3.2 grams of beta alanine is good, but 5 would be even better, and they don't realize that maybe there's a reason why the dose was done a certain way in a ratio to one another. Does Health Canada look at the interactions of the finished formula? And
which is why the monographs exist in the first place. And I kind of remember what I was going to say before is that this category of products exists because they're meant to be a low risk category. So that you're not meant to have physician or healthcare practitioner intervention. It's meant to be a self-care kind of item where you can take it off the shelf. They're not behind the counter, they're over the counter, that you can kind of self-select, right? So it's a low risk category, and that's why the monographs are in place. And that's why Health Canada's kind of number one goal, like you mentioned, is safety for Canadians and anyone that's looking to take the product. So absolutely. And if someone is going to go above and beyond a monograph, let's say, or trying out a new ingredient, that's when studies on the exact dose and the exact product that you're looking to have approved, that's where that comes in to substantiate and prove the safety of the product, and then also give any backing to any efficacy claims that they're trying to make along with it.
Okay, now you mentioned that there are 3 total classes. What is the next class we're working with?
I think I went through all of them. So class 3 is when at least one ingredient does not meet a Health Canada monograph or exceeds a Health Canada monograph. which is when some research and safety and efficacy forms are required to be submitted to help support the application to get approval.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. Now, going further, that we get into the time it takes to get each of these. With COVID hitting and the government, obviously a lot of people working from home, there's been a real backlog. There was a backlog of these applications. And let's not forget that Canada's sort of been an area where a lot of US companies have seen them as an opportunity. And we've seen Australian companies coming here, products from Italy, from the UK. And now it's sort of interesting in the supplement industry because we're getting, thanks to the internet, kind of global branding, and we're getting importing of all these unique types of sports nutrition products from around the world. But with COVID, there's also been a rush for immunity type of products. And so what was the typical time frame for the work that you do and then Health Canada's ability to process that versus where we're at now? What's the trend been?
So it depends on kind of the product that we're looking at. My team typically takes a week, up to a week for a class 3 for sure to get it submitted to Health Canada, depending on the ingredients and if the client has research or if we're doing independent research for the product to help support the application. A class 1 or 2, we can definitely have submitted to Health Canada within the week, as long as we have all the information from the client. Now, the turnaround time from Health Canada was abysmal for a while, to be honest, because they even sent out multiple emails to like us, for example, in the industry saying, we haven't touched an application in 6 months. So they were actually not reviewing applications at all for a period of time, which was extremely frustrating for myself and my staff and my clients. And things were taking way longer than they should have, and et cetera. We are getting back on track. I will say that I think they're maintaining kind of back to their standard review times, which is 60 days for approval for a class 1, 90 days for approval for a class 2, and up to 210 days for approval for a class 3.
So 210 days is obviously the worst case scenario. We're looking at 7 months. And so companies need to sort of work with you early because it's going to take a while, and there's nothing you can do to fast track that. That's just the time that they're going to need. So you have to sort of time that with when you're booking your production run and when you're going to book your marketing campaign around that.
Absolutely. And we try to like ask those questions first when we're working with brands, especially from the US, because they're not used to those kind of times for approval from a regulatory body, and they do have to plan their production runs around it. So we always tell them to kind of plan for the 210 days. And then when we get it sooner, great, then we can expedite the label review and the graphics for the label and all that stuff on the back end. But for approval, because even some of the warnings and cautionary statements could get modified. Some of the health benefit claims could get modified. Even in some cases, the brand name can be modified within the time that it's in the application with Health Canada. So I know it's really, really tough for some brands because they want to get their marketing and everything out there. But if they're marketing with the wrong brand name, it's going to be just a kind of disaster for them, and they're going to have to backtrack. So we try to save them time and money by getting all the information up front as soon as possible, so we can get those applications in and start the process so that they can start working on the marketing and production and everything in the back end once we get those approvals.
Yeah, when I formulate for supplement companies in the US that have distribution in Canada, what I always try to do is actually try to have the Canadian formula done about 6 months in advance of the US, so that when they're both finished, one's already approved at the same time as the other, so that the production run can happen at the same time, and then they can be in market at the same time. And then you're advertising amongst North America. You're taking advantage of any kind of spillover that would happen because the consumer's aware of it, and then they can go to, to a store here and then pick it up. So now you mentioned French English labeling on this. What parts of the label have to be in French? Because this is something that I see some retailers enforcing. Obviously, the Costco's of the world, the Walmarts of the world, et cetera, Shoppers Drug Mart, the premium food, drug, mass kind of accounts. But the mom and pop shops, on some of the websites out there, I don't see that, but I'm actually confused myself in terms of what has to be French, what has to be English, and what are some general guidelines on that?
So the front panel has to be French and English, and the description of the product. The names of the ingredients are recommended to be in French and English. Directions of use and cautions and warnings absolutely have to be in French and English. And if you're going to put like a recommended use, so any health benefit claims on there. But anything like call outs or romance copy or things like that aren't mandated to be in French and English. It is obviously strongly recommended by Health Canada to have everything that's on your label in French and English. And then obviously the manufactured by, lot number, anything that's vital for the customer safety, essentially. So if they need to get a hold of the manufacturer, they have to know that that's the manufacturer's information, things like that. And obviously directions to use and cautions.
What do you do for space? I mean, have you ever had clients, like when I was at Muscle Tech, we had hydroxycut, a really small size count. And in the US, obviously they require warnings that are so long. It's very difficult. And then they have a point size of the font that you're actually supposed to maintain. How do you do this if the size is a really small size? I mean, have you ever encountered that problem? Does Health Canada sort of give you a bit of leeway on things like that?
No, Health Canada won't give you leeway, but we encountered this all the time. And also, like, anytime you add melatonin into anything, you basically have a booklet of cautions and warnings that you have to add. So, I mean, we started this at Jameson years ago. Is the peel label, right? That kind of extends it and doubles your label. So that is the most common, I think, solution to adding space and maintaining your font size when you have a lot of cautions and warnings. And then they're also on the inside. So it also kind of aesthetically, I think, looks a little bit better that they're on the inside versus on the outside. And then you're listing your ingredients on the outer label. There are kind of talks with Health Canada with small print labels and small bottles and things like that to have a QR code that leads you to the remainder of the cautions and warning statements. Those labeling guidelines haven't been finalized yet, but they are in kind of review kind of period right now. So there could be changes coming up to that. Also, we may be moving to the supplement facts box versus our current medicinal versus non-medicinal ingredient listing to kind of be more in line with the US. We will unfortunately never get rid of the bilingual label. So that will always be a thorn in, I know, US companies fine, but it is what it is when you want to sell here. So so there's those couple things that might be changing.
Okay, now in terms of protein powder, is protein powder considered to be a food and it sort of is exempt from this, provided you're not amino spiking, meaning adding glycine and taurine and creatine and some of the things that companies have done to sort of puff up the nitrogen content? If it's just a straight whole intact protein, like a protein powder, or like a bar, are they under a different category? How does that work?
So it depends on the ingredients and kind of the goal of the product. Okay. If they want to make health benefit claims or not, if, like you said, they're sticking to a straight protein, or if they're adding enzymes, if you're adding enzymes in, it's automatically an NPN because of the ingredients. So Health Canada has kind of said, if it looks like food and it's meant to be taken like food, it's a food product. If you want to make any health benefit claims and it's meant to augment or supplement, then it goes under the NHP category. So it depends on the goal of the brand. Because I know I work with a lot of sport nutrition brands, and I mean, it's faster to get a food on the shelf probably with less regulations. But I mean, again, it usually falls into a class 1 or class 2 category. It's pretty quick to get approvals, and then you can make health benefit claims. So they have to weigh the pros and cons of that. Where do they want to make any claims on, or do they want to stick with structure function claims? As far as bars, they kind of fall under the kind of the same in between category, where if they want to make any claims, then they can go under kind of a functional food category right now, which again is only limited structure function claims that you're allowed to make on the label. We are going to be hopefully moving towards a new supplemented food category, which I think is long overdue in Canada. We're hoping to see a draft of these guidelines this fall, so October, November 2021, and then implemented as early in early 2022. So that will include protein bars, different kind of supplemented bars, energy drinks, and teas that can make a little bit more substantial health benefit claims.
Okay. Now, in terms of like some of the requirements Health Canada has for herbs, I understand that they ask you to specify, you have to clarify, is this sourced from the stem? Is this from the root? Is this from the flower? Or is this just truly just the powder of the whole herb? Exactly why do they want to know that?
So different parts of the plant can have different constituents, so different molecules that are present in different parts of the plant, but it's mostly for testing. So all of the products that are on shelf that have NPN numbers and are licensed by Health Canada are required to attest to the quality standards. So they're attesting to Health Canada that they're following the quality standards, and they're testing for ingredient identity, tolerance limits, and making sure that all of the ingredients in the product are there at the same dose that the label states that they are. So when they go into kind of detail about stem and if it's powdered or liquid extract and all that kind of thing, that's for testing mechanisms and to make sure that you can actually do an analytical analysis on the ingredient and the source of the ingredient that you're using.
Now that brings me to my next question. Does a supplement company have to lab test the product or have an independent company lab test, like, or does Health Canada lab test it? What goes on there?
So all products must be tested before they get onto the shelf. It's not tested by Health Canada before you get an NPN license. Yeah. But like I mentioned, you are attesting to Health Canada in the application form that these analytical and lab tests are being done on the product to enforce and maintain the quality of what's in the product. It doesn't have to be a third-party lab. So a lot of manufacturers do the lab testing in-house. It depends on the ingredients, obviously, and some herbs do require outsourcing and doing third-party testing because of the equipment and et cetera, et cetera. Health Canada will test something if there's a whistleblower, let's say, and they get wind of a product that shouldn't be on shelf, somehow got imported or is a Canadian manufactured in Canada and isn't licensed properly or something. That at that point, they'll look at the label, they'll look and see if they have a license, and they'll test the product.
So that brings me to another thing. So first of all, the lab testing, I mean, for those at home that are watching this and thinking that it isn't like the movies where, you know, you watch Forensic Files and they just put the supplement into a machine and then it spits out exactly every single thing that's in there. There's certain herbs that need specific types of testing to be able to show it. And depending on the way in which what area of an herb you've extracted would mean a certain test that works specifically with that. But it's not like most manufacturers are going to have every single device you're going to need to test every single thing you want to put into that. So that is interesting. Now, on that side, though, it is up to you to do the testing, but does anybody check that, make sure you did do a lab test on your product?
So there's not a check. So depending on the product, you usually need to, if you're submitting a class 3, sometimes Health Canada will ask for the certificates of analysis, which is the proof of testing for certain ingredients. Yeah. My staff, like, we always ask all of our clients for all of their certificates of analysis so that we can make sure that we're doing the testing forms properly and submitting them to Health Canada properly for the right tests that they're doing. But I mean, to answer your question, really, no, you're ultimately responsible. So if Joe Smith wants to create a supplement company and decides he doesn't want to test but checks the box on the application that says he's testing, it's his legal responsibility now to maintain that product if he gets a license for it, and is liable to Health Canada if it's not accurate.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, when you get an NPN, you mentioned that you can change the brand name because sometimes obviously things happen. There might be a trademark that is already in place in Canada, so a US brand can't be sold here under that name. I can think of a few examples in the marketplace where that is the case. But Health Canada allows that. Do you just have to let them know, hey, this is going to be the trading name that it's going to use, but that same formula is the same formula that they had approved?
Yep. So there's two types of changes that you can make once you have an NPN license. There's a notification, which is essentially like an administrative change. So if you change the manufacturer's address,
Okay.
brand name can be changed under that. Kind of simple things. If you want to change something more significant, it's called an amendment. So for example, you can, if a monograph has been updated and one of the caution and warning statements has been removed, you can submit an application to remove that statement from your product to save some label room. If you have acquired some new research studies and you want to enhance some of your health claims, you can submit those studies under an amendment and keep your license as is, and then have that dialogue with Health Canada to add or enhance one of your existing health benefit claims that's on your product. The only thing, so a lot of things can change. Also non-medicinal ingredients, if you want to change the flavor, add a flavor, like you mentioned, add brand names, all of that stuff you can do under the same license and continue to sell it under the same license. The only thing that you can't do, or one of the main things that you can't do once you have a license, is change one of the active or medicinal ingredients. So you can't switch out some of those or change the dose of some. In some cases, you can switch the source if, for example, you can't find a certain source anymore, you know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was the case a lot over the last year and a half. We had to switch a lot of source ingredients. You can do that and keep the same NPN number, but the actual ingredient has to still be in there at the same dose that it was licensed for.
Okay. And then when you see an NPN, I mean, where can a consumer go? Like, what is the website that they go to be able to verify this so they can see, hey, is this company, it has an NPN? Let me look up what Canada has on this company. Is there, I mean, I understand there is a website for this.
So there is a database. Like most government websites, they're extremely difficult to navigate and not user friendly in the least bit. Probably the easiest way to do it is to kind of Google NPN database and kind of follow the steps through the Health Canada website, because it's part of the Natural Health Product Directorate, like I mentioned, so NHP, but
Yeah.
it's actually called the Non-Prescription and Natural Health Product Directorate, so NNHPD. So you have to follow through that and then go to the licensed database. And you can put in either the brand name of the product, you can put in the company name, or if you have an NPN number, you can put in the NPN number to search that is still an active NPN.
Okay. All right. That's really cool. Now, in the industry, is there not a sort of a sneaky thing that some companies do where they take an NPN number and they put it on a different finished product? So the number goes on the front of the label, but when you turn the label, that formula is not the same formula that Health Canada approved.
Yeah, I mean, just like any industry, there's sneaky ways and loopholes to
Sure.
try and beat the system or get around the system. Those are typically reported by competitive brands or consumers. Consumers have gotten a lot more savvy in the last few years and really care what they're putting into their bodies. So
Mhm.
they're going to kind of hold the companies accountable to that, which is awesome. But I mean, yeah, once you have an NPN number, you could technically copy and paste it. Hopefully your retailer will catch on to that and not allow you to do that, or your distributor. But I mean, there's sneaky things for everything.
Yeah. So now Health Canada, from what I understand, they're now looking closer at holding manufacturers accountable for some of this. I had a meeting yesterday, and one of the gentlemen was telling me about a claim on an herb that was made on the front of a label. Health Canada contacted the manufacturer to ask them more information about what they're making for them and why, just going behind the scenes on that. But is regulating the manufacturers, is that an effective method in your mind?
Well, I mean, I think everyone at every stage of the product launch kind of process, everyone should be held
Sure.
responsible at what's happening, right? So, I mean, that's fantastic that, I mean, and I've heard that before, that Health Canada will go to the manufacturer and see kind of what's going on and all of that. And there are manufacturers that have products that are for export only, you know what I mean? And do manufacture products that have ingredients that are not allowed in Canada, but they're for export only,
Sure.
and that's allowed. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, whoever's company name is associated with the license of the product is responsible to Health Canada for that product. But yeah, I mean, it's super important that the manufacturers keep their standards. And I don't know about you, but I definitely want all my supplements made in a GMP facility that's maintained, and they take it as seriously as we do. It takes kind of everyone in the industry to kind of stand up and say, no, this is important, and we want to make sure that everyone's safe and getting effective products.
Yeah, my rule is I try to encourage consumers to stick to reputable brands who have more to lose than they do to gain from breaking rules. And generally, the larger companies, they have the money to put proper regulatory people in place, to use proper certified manufacturing facilities, to get insurance, which is a whole other area that that we will save for another day. But by looking at these companies that are aware of all of this work, then you're able to assure yourself that you're getting a product that is compliant. In many respects, Canada has always been labeled as, we have the watered down formulas because we don't have Yohimbe. Well, we have ephedrine HCl perfectly legal here, and you can't get that in every state across the US. And so there is a lot of benefits to some of the things here. And I actually applaud the Canadian companies, Canadian formulas, because I know that this is exactly what's in it, and that this is not going to have an interaction that I'm going to have to worry about on my health side. As long as I use it as recommended. I mean, and let's face it, sports nutrition, if one scoop of an EAA is good, then two is better. And then let's add, this pre-workout with my energy drink as I'm chugging it down, so there's misuse as well that is on the fault of the consumer. But, it's really cool, the work that you do. So now, in terms of going to this, there could be some retailers that need more education in terms of what to look for, and let's face it, the nutraceutical industry is very vast, from the holistic side and the natural side over to the sports nutrition side. And, at Muscle Insider, we focus on the sports nutrition side, but there's a whole other area of that you have to sort of be current with all of that. So sometimes retailers, I'm not here to take a shot at any of the retailers. I think sometimes it's just a lack of information, and I went to the Health Canada website to try to look up some of the information you had. And I saw all these chemical names of these ingredients, and I'm like, what is that? And then you got to Google that thing to say, oh, okay, that's vinpocetine, or, whatever it is. But, I think sometimes that it might just be that they're just not informed, not necessarily that they're trying to capitalize on a loophole.
Yeah, and like you said, it's non-intuitive working with Health Canada and navigating the website and all of that, right? So, I mean, myself and my staff have been we've done thousands of applications, and know how to do it, and know how Health Canada lists things, and know the testing requirements for different ingredients and what health benefit claims are allowed and all of that stuff. And to your point earlier about Health Canada Canada being seen as a watered down, we actually have some really, really strong health benefit claims on certain ingredients that you might not necessarily think we would be allowed in Canada, and they're actually under monographs. So I'm sure some of your listeners might kind of roll their eyes at pre-cleared information from the government, but some and not all of it's great, and a lot of it's outdated, and they work on updating it frequently. But There are some ingredients with extremely strong health benefit claims, and symptomatic, like specific symptoms and all of that to really support the products and to support the industry to have effective products.
Amazing. So in terms of that, I mean, what are some of the top line information when a client wants to get a hold of you? I mean, where do they go? I mean, obviously, because everybody looks at Canada as well, let me just sell into Canada, but they have to be compliant into Canada. So how does a supplement company looking to hire you for your services, how do they go about, like, what are the basic steps that they would go?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a discovery call first with the client to see what their goals are, how many products, what they're thinking, what their timelines are, and then kind of give them some realistic expectations on that. So if they expect to be on shelves within 30 days, we kind of let them know that's probably not going to happen,
Sure.
you know? So we get that kind of stuff out of the way first. We do a formulation review report for any applications that they think that they want to submit. So we do a full regulatory analysis of the products that they're looking to have approved in Canada, and then give suggestions on that. And then, so sometimes we might suggest that ingredients be modified to meet monographs if they want a faster approval time. We might make suggestions on the health benefit claims to reword them to make them Health Canada friendly. Mm-hmm. And things like that, and might have comments on their existing labels, on their dose, depending on what it is. Sometimes we get great products and they need little recommendations, and then we would recommend to go forward with an application, give them a quote with a timeline, and then the cost of the formulation review report is put towards the application.
Now, this is something in my experience you don't want to chintz on, because you're going to screw it up. You're going to have your hopes up, and then you kind of get, not to say
Scott,
back of the line, but it's not like I want the cheapest regulatory person, you know, like a good friend of mine, John Cardillo, who owns a Body Pro gym, and he's very successful businessman. And he said, I never look for the cheapest lawyer. I look for the smartest lawyer. I don't look for the cheapest accountant. I look for the smartest accountant, because I'm going to save way more money by getting somebody who has the expertise. But what I find is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it the more ingredients in a product, the more expensive it's going to be, because the more work that has to be done to justify each of the ingredients versus a shorter list? Or how does that kind of work?
Not with my company. So
Okay.
different consultancies price differently. We have a flat rate fee depending on the type of application. So class 1 is a flat rate fee, class 2 is a flat rate fee, class 3 is a flat rate fee.
Yeah.
And then if clients have 15 plus products, then we do some sort of bundle package,
Sure.
to decrease the fee a little bit for them. But like you said, it's time versus money. And a lot of people try and do it themselves, and then they come crawling back, like, Kyley, I did it wrong. I don't know. I've lost 6 months, and we got to start over. So the earlier people can, when you're thinking about Canada, even if you're not ready, you know what I mean? If they just want, like I said, we do a formulation review report to let you know what is allowed and what isn't, what's going to fly, what isn't going to fly, and what the timelines are. So even information like that, I find is pretty helpful. And there's strategies that we can use to either get you in faster or change up the label a bit, or depending on what the company's goals are. If the company's goals are speed to market, or if the company's goals are to maintain the formula or to maintain a certain health benefit claim that they've done studies on and want to maintain, that's what we want to learn about them to be able to keep that into account when we're doing the project with them.
Okay, so now if a company wants to reach you, obviously Natural Sci Reg is the name of your company. What's your website?
Yep, naturalscireg.ca. And my email is kpaul, Paul, at naturalscireg.ca.
Amazing. Listen, thanks very much for taking the time, Kyley. I really appreciate it. This is very insightful. And this is another side of the supplement industry that a lot of people won't cover. But I'm really glad that we had your expertise here and you explained it very, very well. And we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you very much. Bye, Kyley.